state of tomorrow? What will it be? What challenges may the digitalization of government structures pose? I'm delighted to introduce the moderator of this session, Mr. Ryan Chilcote, independent global affairs and economics broadcaster, Bloomberg TV and CNN alumnus. Ryan, thank you very much for joining. I will let you introduce the speakers and take it from there. Good luck with the discussion.
Thank you very much, and good luck to the teams competing in that very interesting competition. Look forward to checking in with them later. We look forward to having as fun of a conversation as we just heard. Obviously, you heard the topic there. It's the digital state of tomorrow. Roger, Igor, for much of our audience, you don't need any introduction, but I will say, Igor, you head up security at Rostelecom, Roger, Chief Security Advisor at Microsoft. One of the things that we heard in the panel discussions before us and those speeches was that to a large extent, the digital state of tomorrow is already with us, thanks in large part to the pandemic. And along with that technological advancement, a lot of problems associated with cybersecurity. Roger, I want to ask you, you're sitting in Europe, you're out there talking to European companies. Take us inside the room. What are their concerns right now when it comes to cybersecurity? What are you talking about when you close the door?
It's kind of it was an interesting journey over the last 1.5 years. Initially in the first few weeks, it was all about keeping the lights on. So if you look at confidentiality, integrity, and availability, it was all about availability. And this pretty much changed then. So today discussions are going down the road. How can we actually build a new and modern architecture going forward based on what we learned with the pandemics and home office? So having architectures like Zero Trust, really simplifying your network, but going down a notion where you don't trust anything and anybody anymore unless explicitly verified, is something we are looking into with a lot of customers at the moment. So it really changes the setup, and it's a huge, even a disruptive change for a lot of organizations at the moment.
Igor, what kinds of threats keep you up most at night right now?
Yeah, when we talk about our information security, COVID is a very difficult question. We do not already have enough network perimeter. We do not have enough control under our employees, and this is a key problem in today's period. And of course, the today's discussion is about state services. State services is rising, developing very fast now, because we do not have offices. We would like to have services at our home. And of course, cybersecurity, information security is a key question today.
Yeah, that's a good point you raised there, because Rostelecom is obviously working, perhaps the main driver for the Russian government in advancing the whole digitalization program. The biggest concern, I think, there is always people's personal data. So what's your latest thinking about how to protect that data?
This is interesting question, but of course, we have a serious challenge to protect personal data. But when we talk about these leakages, when we talk about leakages of personal databases, this is not leakages from federal databases, because federal databases are I think that protected more powerful than regional databases or commercial databases. And the most of data leakages are not come from federal. This is comes from e-commerce, and even the big federal leakages are just a compilation of private databases plus negative campaign in public. And the emphasis in security should be different. Federal bases are now mostly protected. The focus on this protection are maybe 2 or 3 years or we have budget and resources for this protection. But in private business, in small business, in regions, we do not have enough protection. And the main goal now for our state is to reduce amount of critical personal data in these places. Just today, we discussed with Ministry of Digital Development issues of creating digital trust platform to minimize the amount of personal data on the ground. Some types of tokenizations, use of digital identifiers, data anonymization, and this key to protect personal data of citizens, of Russian citizens, because we do not need to leave our personal data, for example, in any e-commerce, in any, I do not know, hotels, etc. Tokenization and data anonymization can be key to protection of personal data.
Thank you very much, Igor. Roger, you heard that there. Basically, Igor arguing that the issue isn't so much with government infrastructure as it is with regional infrastructure and business infrastructure. I want to go back to national government infrastructures a little bit later, but since we got on to businesses, just real quickly before we return to the issue of government and their role in all of this, when you talk to businesses, over the last year, how has the conversation changed in terms of their concern about cybersecurity? It used to be that it was really something that never got discussed very much outside of the IT department.
Well, there are two sides to that, and one is it reached the business level as well. So it's a CEO topic, it's a business risk topic. In addition to what Igor just said, I often feel we shouldn't underestimate the importance of identities in this space, because 90%, or I don't know, something like 85 to 90% of the incidents we are involved somewhere involve credential theft. So protecting you can't protect the data if you don't protect the identities, because if I'm you, I get access to your data. And when it comes then to the privacy aspect, I feel there are interesting developments around decentralized identities where you really keep your private data with you and just decide which data you're going to release. So there are different aspects to that. What changed though with home office, I feel a lot of phishing attacks got more successful because the social control is missing. In the past, when you were in the office and you got a spooky email, you could ask your colleague to come over and look at it. This part kind of disappears because we are sitting at home and we are alone. So you'd rather probably tempted to click on a link you wouldn't have clicked on in your office back there. But then again, the phishing email is the first step, which is again typically a credential compromise going forward.
Yeah, interesting. And in terms of, we just actually, I should remind everyone in the audience that they're able to send their questions in, and we just actually got one of those questions on this topic to do with verification, because it came up and verifying online. So Yevgeny has asked, well, one of the things you haven't talked about so far is deep fakes. I want to ask you, Igor, how big of a concern is deep fakes and the ability of people to fool verification or authentication systems? And how concerned are you about how deep fakes could develop from the level they're at now?
Interesting question. Really, I do not see any interest to deepfakes now in official. Of course, the deepfakes discussing in expert communities how to verify, how to determine what is deepfake. And now for us, for citizens, deepfakes are maybe something like entertainment. I saw my own deepfake video when I tell something to audience. It for me, it was very funny that time. But of course, I'm sure that 2-3 years, this problem will be very important for us.
Yeah, enough of a problem that people could actually for example, fake their way into someone's bank account?
Yeah. You know, we have a biometrics platform in Russia, and we have a lot of liveness checks there. But I do not want to tell that this is not popular, but the most population are using their own password, login, and no biometrics. Because when we talk about security of biometrics, we talk about that we can have a lot of passwords, million passwords, but we have only 10 fingers and 2 eyes, and compromission of these identifiers could be a real problem for us.
Well, I guess you could like wear a mask or cut out the eyes on a picture and, you know, put those eyes over your own. Quick question, the second half of that for you, Roger, from Yevgeny. He says, do governments need to regulate deep fakes to prevent them from becoming big enough of a problem, and how do businesses deal with it? Just real quickly, because I want to jump back to the governmental aspect of this conversation.
Well, I'm not sure whether regulation is really helpful here, because typically it takes, you know, for me, regulation is a reflection of social norms we started to develop, and this just takes time.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm naive there, but I'm not too concerned about, you know, abusing deepfakes for biometric logon. I'm convinced that biometric logon is the future, because passwords aren't. But you know, social engineering and all that stuff, that's really scary when it comes to deepfakes. And even though what you see today, how powerful these platforms are already just for fun, it's really scary what they can put into your mouth if they want to. And then it comes into social engineering. And I guess we will see attacks which we've never seen before in a new way, leveraging deepfakes. Bad guys are extremely creative in these ways.
Yeah, Igor, let's go back to your work with the government and the whole governmental space. So Rostelecom doesn't just help the government in terms of its digitalization drive, it also helps protect the digital infrastructure and the public infrastructure involved, you know, that there is in Russia. And I understand you're working on an early warning system of sorts for cyber threats. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I would like to tell you a few words. Yeah, protecting of state infrastructure from cyber attacks is most difficult question. A month ago, our national CERT, together with us, published the result of our serious work to identify a series of attacks on government systems. These were the most complex and extremely sophisticated attacks. Their goal were gaining control on the IT systems of few government organizations. And these attacks, these types of attacks, are not detected by any information security systems or technology. And we have estimated the cost of one such attack, and it exceeds $1.5 million. This is very difficult to determine attacks. And in general, if we talk about the landscape of attacks on our government systems, I give you only one figure. In 5 days after the appearance of new resource in the domain gov.ru, a targeted attack begins on it. In 5 days, we already see attack on new government resource. It is very difficult, and this is not tomorrow problem. This is today for us.
Roger, Microsoft works with governments in terms of cyber defense. How concerned are you about government cyber defenses? How big of a problem is it?
Well, it is obviously a problem across the board. I mean, it's hard, as Igor just pointed out, it's hard to protect, especially against targeted attacks and sophisticated attacks we see across the board. And I extremely welcome that I sometimes feel that the bad guys are really good in sharing information. You know, they have their underground markets and they share information, and all these different groups playing there, they try to exchange at least part of the information. We on the not dark side, on the bright side of life, if you want, are not so good talking about these incidents. And one of the ways to actually destroy the business case of the attackers is sharing these tactics, sharing indicators of compromise, sharing threat intelligence, so that we can learn from each other. And sometimes I feel we are not too good doing that, because by definition, cyber attacks are not happening. You know, you don't want them to be the press. You don't want to talk about it. And that's one of the areas where we definitely need to improve, because otherwise, I mean, we can destroy the return on investment by making the attacks, destroying the attacks, making the attack public. And I think that's one of the ways we have to go.
Well, Roger, since we've gotten into this subject so deeply already, I mean, obviously, sometimes governments aren't just involved in defending themselves from attacks, but sometimes they're involved in being the perpetrators of attacks. And we've seen this interesting trend at Microsoft, who, as I was mentioning earlier, works with governments, including the US government, where it has started to name names on occasion, did that with SolarWinds, pointed the finger very publicly at Russia. Why have you guys changed tact when it comes to identifying countries that you believe are the source of attacks?
Well, we are pointing out the groups which are standing behind the attack. So we pointed to Nobelium, we pointed to Hafnium, two groups which we knew that they are active in the underground. And I mean, at the end of the day, we feel that it's important that we make these things public, and it's that we talk about the perpetrators behind it. So pointing out Hafnium, pointing out Nobelium, or however you call them in your threat intelligence environment, including the tactics they apply, is extremely important to us. On the other hand, we need to build a trusted environment on the internet, because we all want to grow. We all want to. At the end of the day, the businesses need to grow, whether they are in Russia or in Europe or wherever. That doesn't really matter. So having a set of rules how, on the one hand side, companies behave, and on the other hand side, governments behave, is extremely important. And that's one of the reasons, I think it's about 3 years ago, where we launched a Digital Geneva Convention, where we feel that it's important that these kind of rules get internationally established and agreed upon.
Digital Geneva Convention, eh?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Igor, let me ask you about that, because, you know, this is one of the biggest points of contention between Russia and the United States, as you know. Was one of the biggest points of contention when President Biden met President Putin. And as we speak, I believe, or at least any time now, US and Russian cyber security officials are going to meet. Do you think that they can sort out these kinds of problems?
I think that this question is difficult and just forbidden of any attacks from Russia to America or from America to the Russian resources, because cybercrime do not have nationality, and we can't involve them to resolving this problem. But the most part that Roger told, that information should be opened, information about any vulnerability, types of attacks, their strategies or their attacks should be shared between countries, between government, or between expert community. This is a key to resolving this problem, because when I told about attacks to government resources, to our state, we catch this attack because we saw signs of such attacks in another part of our country, on another infrastructures. And information exchange is extremely important. And a second part is discussion and information exchange about cybercrime groups, because you know, colonial pipeline attack was this is not a state group. This is crime, and of course, information about such crimes group should be open between countries.
Very interesting point, the colonial pipeline there, because it raises two issues right away. First off, ransomware, which we seem to have seen or an explosion of, demanding ransoms from companies, but also an attack you could very easily argue on critical infrastructure, which we didn't see very much of in the past either. Roger, what's going on and how concerned are you about this?
Well, ransomware is a big issue, and really attacks on critical infrastructure are a huge challenge across the board. And we have seen, it was kind of interesting if we look at our intelligence at the beginning of the pandemic. It seems that certain underground groups agreed upon not attacking the healthcare sector with ransomware. I think this agreement lasted about 2 or 3 weeks because it's just too tempting to attack them because you can make money. And, if we look at, I talked about disrupting the ROI, so destroying the tools they have by publishing them. On the other hand, part of the price they pay is if they get caught and convicted. And that's one of the areas where we need to improve. And I feel that this is a collaboration between private and public sector, which needs to get better, that we get after the bad guys and make sure that they're convicted, because that's part of the risk you're taking. And as long as you can hide behind cryptocurrencies, and as long as you're pretty safe that you are not being caught, the price of running such attacks are pretty low. And that's one of the things, one of the dynamics which we need to change together with governments, I guess.
Igor, very interesting, the reference there to cryptocurrency. We actually have immediately following this a discussion about digital currencies, cryptocurrencies. I wonder, do you think that, or do either of you think that the cryptocurrency, for example, because you mentioned the Colonial Pipeline incident, is it like an enabling factor now that you've got Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these ways to move money around, perhaps more or less transparently than you used to? Is that a problem? I know they're going to get into real depth, so we can just very briefly discuss this, but what do you reckon?
Well, I mean, the follow the money part of an investigation is definitely harder with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Or any cryptocurrency these days. Is it the source of the problem? I don't think so, but it's definitely one of the channels they love to leverage.
Igor?
Yeah, the same. Anonymization is the most problem issue in these investigations. We can't mostly find root cause and key person in any of these cybercrime groups, because we do not have any instruments of de-anonymization in digital currencies.
Yeah, I should point out that a lot of the money in that particular attack was recovered, even though it was cryptocurrency. So it just may be that sometimes it's not quite as opaque as people think. Look, we focused on a lot of the problems that all this technological innovation and the advance of the advance of technology in our homes has created. I want to ask you very briefly where you see the opportunity, right? And it's a blue sky question, but Roger, let me start with you. 20 years from now, what is the world going to look like technologically speaking? And will all these cybersecurity problems, maybe I'll start with you, Igor, because you're on my screen right now. Will all of these cybersecurity issues have been worked out, or will I still have to kind of panic every time I get on my laptop?
For me, this is a very difficult question. What happened in 20 years? My own opinion that we will talk about artificial intelligence, protection of artificial intelligence, and most important, protection from artificial intelligence. Do you remember the movie Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
How could I forget?
Skynet system. I'm sure that this is not far from, this is not a very fantastic movie anymore.
Roger?
Well, you know, the 20 years question, when I was CISO, my CFO asked me to give a 3 years plan. And I looked at him and said, you're kidding me. If I'm happy if I know how my next 6 months look like.
Yeah.
And think back, I mean, the iPhone was released, I think 2007, so 14 years ago, and think about how our world's changed in the last 14 years. To me, I feel that we have huge potential with technologies which are coming now, with the platforms which we are seeing, like decentralized identities and so on, to drive new business models and interesting business models, new ways of collaboration. And I hope that we don't need another pandemic to actually accelerate certain of these developments. I feel if we do our job right, it's not all about the downsides and the criminals. It's actually more about how we can drive new business models, new collaboration models, new ways of getting together in a secure and safe way. Maybe we are not seeing each other on a flat screen then, but sitting like holograms around the table and feeling like we are seeing each other. Stuff like that will definitely come over time. And really driving that and enabling that in a secure and safe way, I think it's the best mission we can have.
Fantastic. And I should point out, Roger, that Microsoft will be talking about zero trust. There's a speech on the platform that people can watch where you kind of go into detail about your solution. IBM is going to be talking about the cloud. You can catch that speech there as well. And we're going to have conversations later as part of the discussion today for this conference about the supply chain risk that we touched on ever so briefly. So a lot of the stuff that we got into, Igor, Roger, we're going to be going into more depth throughout the day. Thank you both for doing this. It was very short. We just scratched the surface, particularly with that geopolitical stuff. But I'm very grateful to the both of you. And with that, I'm going to pass back to Alexander.